be recording the 3 sessions that we're offering to our providers, so that we can share the recording as a resource afterwards. All lines will be muted, so if you haven't had a chance yet, if you can please mute yourselves, just again to minimize any disruption or noise feedback. We do ask that if you could please type questions in the chat. So at the end, there will be a point for there is a Q&A session, but it is also a pretty informal session. So please also feel free to kind of type things as we're going, put up your hand. Also, at the end of the Q&A, you can also unmute, so you can, if preferred, you can definitely speak your question as well. And we'd please ask that to follow our code of conduct today as well. Next slide, please. Great. So what are we discussing today? As we had mentioned before, we are going to be transitioning the temporary CHB-HPP to the Canada BC Housing Benefit Program. Before we get started and kind of get into the details of that, just wanted to go over some of the terminology. We do use a lot of the acronyms, so just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. So the CHB-HPP Legacy Program, that's the Canada Housing Benefit Homelessness Prevention Program. During our presentation, we may also refer to it as the Legacy Program. So just to kind of highlight, that is one and the same. And again, that was a program that rolled out in July 2020. The program that we will be transitioning to is the Canada British Columbia Housing Benefit, so the CBCHB program. During the presentation, we may also be referring to that as the CHB or Canada Housing Benefit. So again, all the same program there. Again, what we are discussing today is the transition from CHB-HPP to the Canada BC Housing Benefit. Today's discussion does not include HOP or the standard HPP. So it does not include the homelessness outreach program or any rent subs kind of in the standard HPP program. So just want to highlight that as well. All right, so why are we here today? So CHB-HPP, so the Legacy program, as we've noted, I guess for the last 2 years now, approximately, is coming to an end March 31, 2023, so the end of this fiscal period. As mentioned before, we will be transitioning or rolling out the kind of permanent funding, which is the Canada BC Housing Benefit. That transition is going to be happening in 2 phases. For our providers that have existing legacy clients, you'll kind of be a part of phase 1, and that's going to be the transition from the CHB-HPP, so your existing legacy clients, transitioning them to the CBCHB. So again, that's phase 1 of this program or of the transition. And then phase 2 are going to be any request for new rent supplements under the new program. So phase 2 will be done through a request for proposal, so an RFP, for new additional number of clients supported under CBCHB. So if you currently have 5 legacy clients, phase 1 is going to be transitioning those 5 legacy clients from CHB-HPP to the new Canada BC Housing Benefit. If you would like to request additional rent subs, that will be through the request for proposal. And again, that's going to be phase 2 of this transition. What we'll be reviewing today is going to be the details of the Canada BC Housing Benefit Program. So whether you have existing legacy clients or not, definitely will be important to go over the details of the Canada BC Housing Benefit and how that's different from the existing CHB-HPP. the benefits of transitioning from the CHB-HPP program, and also we'll go over timeline and next steps. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background, kind of to bring us to where we're at right now. The governments of Canada and British Columbia signed the CMHC British Columbia bilateral agreement under the 2017 National Housing Strategy. So this was back in June 2018. Under this agreement, the CBCHB, so the Canada BC Housing Benefit Program, was created and was supposed to roll out April 2020. Of course, we were in the middle of a pandemic at that time. So in response to the pandemic, CMHC gave us permission for the Canada BC Housing Benefit funding to be repurposed on an interim basis. And that was administered as CHB-HPP rent subs for a short-term period. So it was kind of this merging of two programs. So it was the Canada Housing Benefit and the Homelessness Prevention Program. Again, it was rolled out for a short-term period. So during that time, approximately 2,000 rent supplements were administered and among 110 providers. That, again, it was a short-term program, so that ran for 9 months from July 1, 2020 to March 31, 2021. As of April 1, 2021, so that following fiscal, CHB-HPP stopped receiving additional clients. So at that time was when so new clients could not be added or served through this program, and it was only the legacy clients that were eligible that can be continued to be supported as of April 1, 2021. So as noted there, monthly payments continued for clients that were already in receipt of the CHB-HPP rental supplement and were eligible and referred to as legacy clients. So where we're at right now, so the temporary CHB-HPP Legacy program ends, and that's end of this fiscal, so March 31, 2023. So all existing legacy clients will be given the opportunity to convert to the regular CBCHB program. Next slide, please. So for timeline, so it's September 2022, we are announcing the transition to the Canada BC Housing Benefit. Next steps, as a provider. So again, if you do have existing, so we're talking about phase 1 right now. So if you do have existing legacy clients, you'll be signing, there was the sign up to send your information. There will be a new agreement with that funding program. So there will be the signing, so signing that new agreement, but also your existing CHB-HPP agreement will be terminating. There will be, so we're doing these info sessions, but there will also be training on a new database where we're going to be recording those rent supplements. And the database is the Housing Connections system. So some of you may be familiar with that. So part of the transition is setting up that new system, getting the rent supplements recorded in there. And again, by March 31, 2023, the transition will be completed. So all existing legacy clients will be converted to the Canada BC Housing Benefit. So again, that's for folks that are a part of the phase 1 rollout, and then phase 2. So our providers, CHB-HPP providers, you will have the opportunity through a request for proposal to request new rent supplements under that program. Now, before we kind of get into the advantages of the CBCHB, I wasn't able to see the chat, but just wondering if there was any questions just from that first little piece there.
I have a question.
Yes.
Good morning.
Morning.
Sorry, I'm not sure. Did you say that we were already sent the sign up sheets, the provider sheets, or not yet?
Not yet.
Okay, I
Yeah.
just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, no
I
problem. So
didn't
there
miss
will,
anything.
yeah, no problem. So there will be a form that we'll send out to gather the information that we need to set you up on the new system, but also to provide the training for the new database as well.
I also had a question.
Yes.
Hi, Jane. Here, I'll
Hi,
just
Jane.
turn my camera on. Hi. We had clients under this old program, but the funding because the funding was stopped, when the funding ran out, they were no longer receiving any more subsidies, like it just ended for them. Does that mean that we're not considered a future provider at all? Or like, do we have to reapply for funding? Like, how does that work? Like, we don't have clients currently receiving benefits, but we did like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, so for the phase one, it's going to be for existing clients. So they have to be in receipt right now.
Okay.
That's what's going to be the initial focus of converting over to the permanent program. And then phase two, when there's that request for proposal, that's when you would submit in the request for new rent supplements under this program. And then we will send new also further information once that request for proposal is released. Our timeline, I believe, is by end of the year, but yeah, we'll also go over that as well, just like Erin noted. All right, and then with that, I am actually going to pass it on to Erin Smandich, so Director of Applicant Services, to go over the new Canada BC Housing Benefit Program. Thanks, Erin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time this morning. So yeah, I'm going to talk a bit about the advantages of the Canada Housing Benefit. There was a question in the chat that some of you may have seen around why are we converting to the Housing Connection system from HIFIS, and I'll go over that in the coming slides here. So what are some of the advantages of the Canada Housing Benefit? Is because we're converting this to the regular program, not the interim temporary program that was approved by COVID, it does have some adaptability. It is depending on the client groups that you serve, we may be able to serve a wider range of clients so that we have a list of target client groups that the rent supplements can be targeted to. They're not really just the homeless populations that you were doing for the CHB-HPP. Also in that, if you currently have 20 CHB HPP Legacy clients and we convert those 20 or 5 or 10 or whatever amounts you have over to the regular Canada Housing Benefit, those rent subsidies can be reallocated when somebody leaves the program. So right now with your legacy programs, you're slowly, as people leave, reducing your number of active clients until eventually you'll have 0. But by converting, we will enshrine that number that you currently have into the new agreement, and you'll be able to reallocate if a client leaves the program. Increased subsidy. We can provide amount greater than the maximum 450 that was provided by the Legacy CHB-HPP. In the Lower Mainland, a single person can get up to $600. We have a range of different amounts. Families can even get a little bit more, so it has some more greater funds that might be able to assist eligible households. The more reach, where it talks here on this slide about the opportunity to increase the number of benefits administered. So that's really what Admis was talking about as phase 2, is that we are going to hopefully within the next month or so also putting out an RFP for housing providers who want to take on additional Canada housing benefits. Speaking frankly and honestly, we were hoping that as part of transitioning the Canada Housing Benefit, the legacy over to the regular Canada Housing Benefit, we were hoping we were going to be able to give you just actually increase the numbers as we did that. But when we were looking into it and speaking to our procurement department, because the legacy CHB-HPP was provided without an RFP, we weren't able to do it at this time. So, but we are going to have an opportunity. And so for those providers, and I think there was was a question just before I came on around if you don't have any legacy clients left, well, then you will have the opportunity to submit through the Canada Housing Benefit RFP that will be coming up in the next couple months. Next slide. So what's the maximum benefit or rent supplement? For CHB-HPP, you had up to $450 per client. For the Canada Housing Benefit proper, up to $600 for singles and couples, and it's even a higher amount for families if you are a group that supports families. Who are eligible for the CHB-HPP? You had a list around leaving corrections, women fleeing violence, youth including in leaving care, people of Indigenous descent. For the Canada Housing Benefit, it's everything that was covered by CHB-HPP, plus it's just anyone experiencing or at risk of homelessness, people with disabilities, persons dealing with mental health or addictions, veterans, racialized communities, large families, people requiring wheelchairs. And if you have another group that's not there, we can certainly talk about that, because if it is a group at need, we can certainly look at targeting it. So if your group has a specific client group, a population, a demographic that you're serving, we can certainly discuss to see if it would fall under the Canada Housing Benefit, even if it might not have fallen under the CHB-HPP in the past. Next slide. We spoke about this already. With your current legacy CHB-HPP, when somebody leaves the program, that subsidy is lost. With the Canada Housing Benefit, you would be able to continue to reallocate. So if somebody leaves the program, you can select somebody else to allocate that benefit to. The admin fee for the CHB-HPP, it was 10% or $45 per rental supplement per month based on the number of eligible clients. And for the Canada Housing Benefit, it's slightly higher. It's $55 per unit per month. How will you be recording data? So with the Canada Housing Benefit HPP Legacy, you did it in HIFIS, which was the same system that you tracked your HOP, HPP rent supplements. With the Canada Housing Benefit, you're going to use the Housing Connection system. So there are a number of reasons for this. One of the reasons is consistency in reporting. Under the Canada Housing Benefit program, we have to do extensive reporting to CMHC, to the federal government. And that was, all the funding for the Canada Housing Benefit comes from the federal government, and we have to do quarterly reporting to the federal government. And we've built our Housing Connection system to be able to do that reporting, to be able to pull that data, to do the reporting, and to do that reporting to CMHC to give them all their information. The other reason for the Housing Connections database is that we have actually built the funding program formula logic into the into the database. We will go over this later on, and as you convert, we'll give you training, but we have different, CHB has different rent ceilings for different communities across the province. The CHB program has a formula that it uses to calculate the benefit, and by using the Housing Connection system, the Housing Connection system will apply the formula for you, so you don't have to memorize that or look it up every single time. It will also provide you with some other assistance to do some of the notification to the tenant and speak to the tenant. One of the things that CMHC requires is that we, for every single client that gets a Canada Housing Benefit, you need to at least once a year give them something that tells them what their benefit is and that it is coming from the federal government. It's a requirement from CMHC, and the Housing Connection system will generate all those letters and documents for you, so you can just hand them to your clients. Next slide. How does the annual review process work? So for the HPP Legacy system, the provider was responsible for confirming ongoing client eligibility. With the Canada Housing Benefit, once again, the provider is responsible for confirming ongoing client eligibility, but our Housing Connections database will remind you when that's coming up. About 4 months before a review is coming up, it'll remind you that it's time to review this individual's eligibility. You can generate a form to send to the client for them to fill out to come back and to keep that. So all of that is handled within the Housing Connections database. Next slide. T5 slips. Some of you may have heard about T5 slips, some of you may not have. Emails went out to all housing providers that administer rent supplements in the private market a few months back with information on the need to comply with issuing T5007 statement of benefits. And both the legacy programs and Canada Housing Benefit proper programs do fall under that. There's no difference between the two. If you haven't heard about the Canada Housing Benefit, the T5, there is another series of webinars that we're going to spend another 90 minutes just talking about the T5 slips and the requirements for that. And we will, I think Dexter will likely share in the chat, and we'll email it out to everyone after this meeting, the link to those T5 seminars. So whether it would be yourself or anyone in your organization who might be responsible for issuing, doing your accounting, issuing T5 slips. And those invites have already gone out to all impacted housing providers. Next slide, or next. Can we increase the number of benefits? So CHB-HPP Legacy, your number of benefits was just slowly declining as people left the program. Under the conversion to the regular CHB, we are just going to convert them over, and enshrine those in the agreement, and then through the phase 2 that Adma spoke about, we'll have an RFP, and if you want to increase your benefits, you'll have that opportunity through the RFP process. One of the other differences between CHB-HPP and the Canada Housing Benefit is residency. Under the CHB-HPP, there was no residency requirement. Under the Canada Housing Benefit, you do need to be Canadian citizen, permanent resident, Canada, or anyone who's applied for refugee status. Really, who this excludes, you wouldn't be eligible for Canada Housing Benefit proper if you were here illegally, if you had no status here, if you were on a visitor or a student visa, or perhaps if you were under sponsorship, and there are some exceptions around sponsorship that we can deal with on an individual basis. So, but what this also means is you still will have, if you deliver HPP, which most of you have just the regular HPP rent supplements, you would still have flexibility under that program, but under the Canada Housing Benefit, it would need to go to British Columbians who meet our Canadian residency requirement. So how is the Canada Housing Benefit calculated? We have this concept called adjusted rent, and the adjusted rent concept is what is the individual paying in the private market compared to the rent ceiling for the community that they live in, and the lesser amount is the adjusted rent, and we'll go into some actual examples. Every tenant has to make a contribution towards the adjusted rent, and the difference is the housing benefit. So if we move to the next slide, these are how the rent ceilings work. So if you have singles or couples, families of 4 or less, so this could be a single parent with 1 child, a couple with 2 children, a single parent with 3 children, that would be the 4 or less, families of 5 or more. So you can see that we have a range of rent ceilings here. Zone 1 is basically Metro Vancouver. Zone 2 are some other higher rent ceiling areas across the province, and Zone 3 is the rest of the province. We will be over time reviewing the zones. Currently, these zones are aligned with the zones that we have for the Safer Shelter Aid for Elderly Renters and Rental Assistance Program to try and have some consistency around the application of the zones. Next slide. The tenant shelter contribution. If somebody is on income assistance, so the top table is if you are on income assistance or disability, your shelter contribution is your shelter rate from income assistance. So this is just an example, $375 for a single person, $570 for 2 people, $665 for 3 people, and it goes up as the family size grow. So it's fairly easy. Likely a large percentage of the CHB-HPP Legacy are on income assistance, many of them single, so their shelter contribution will be $375. If an applicant is not in receipt of income assistance or disability assistance, their shelter contribution is 30% of the household's income, subject to a minimum shelter contribution. So if you had someone whose income was $1,200 a month, 30% as a single person, 30% of 1,200 is 360. 360 is less than the 375 minimum. The 375 would be their shelter contribution. And I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you right now. We're going to get into some actual examples where they all fit together. And then once again, the housing connection system will do almost all these calculations for you. So next slide. And there. So here, if you look at the green, hopefully it looks green to everyone, the colored box in the bottom corner there with the circle around it, we have a single person on disability assistance living in Vancouver, and they are paying rent of $1,200 a month. So if you go up to number 1 at the top, calculate the adjusted rent, their actual rent is $1,200. The rent ceiling for zone 1 is $975. And therefore the adjusted rent that we'll use is $975. When you enter this person into the Housing Connections database, you would enter their address and what municipality that address is in, what their actual rent is, and the Housing Connection system will compare that to adjusted rent and present the adjusted rent to you. You don't have to look at that. The next step is you calculate their tenant shelter contribution. In this case, they're on income assistance. The shelter contribution is $375. In the Housing Connections database, you will say Bob moved into this unit in Burnaby and Bob's on income assistance. And the Housing Connections will say, well, if Bob's a single person on income assistance, his shelter contribution is $375. And then the next step is to calculate the housing benefit. And that is taking the adjusted rent of $975, subtracting the $375 tenant shelter contribution to get a benefit of $600 a month. Another example here. So once again, the bottom right corner or left corner, we have a couple employed making $2,000 a month. They live in Nanaimo, which is in zone 2. Their rent is $1,800 a month. The adjusted rent is the rent ceiling in $941, which is less than their actual market rent. Their tenant shelter contribution, 30% of $2,000 is $600 a month, compared to the minimum TRC for a couple of $375. And that means their tenant shelter contribution is their 30% of income. And then the calculating the housing benefit is $941, the rent ceiling, minus $600, their benefit is $341. Next slide. Here we have a family of 3 on income assistance in Vernon, paying $1,100 a month. Calculating the adjusted rent, their actual rent of $1,100 as compared to the rent ceiling of $1,258. So in this case, their actual market rent is less than the rent ceiling, so their adjusted rent is $1,100. Looking at the tenant shelter contribution, the shelter rate for someone on income assistance, a family of 3, is $665. And then calculate the housing benefit, $1,100 minus $665 is $435. So one of the tenets of the Canada Housing Benefit, and one of the requirements of CMHC in the design of the Canada Housing Benefit, was that the Canada Housing Benefit was to reduce the shelter to income ratio. It wasn't to bring everyone to 30% of income, and they wanted to also be able to have consistency in the application. So because of our Housing Connections database and how it's designed, we have all these variables in the system, and it does those calculations for you. Next slide. So now we're going to move into the next steps. So the next step is to start the transition. Dexter's going to post in the chat, and we'll email it out to everyone after the meeting in case you don't get it with the chat. A survey that we want you to complete with just some basic information around who's going to be your contact for the conversion, how we should be contacting them, how many people in your organization are that need training and access to our Housing Connections database. So Dexter's going to put that link in the chat. We'll email it out to you after the meeting as well. So you'll go in there, fill out that form to sign up, and then we'll be contacting you. You'll receive a package in the mail that will terminate your HPP agreement with the replacement and signing of the new CHB agreement. We'll set up user IDs and access to the Housing Connection system, and likely in starting in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we'll start doing webinar sessions and training on the new system and how to enter in the system. And we'll have conversations around how we can make this as simple as possible for converting your existing tenants over. And so, you know, how can we work through identifying the existing recipient that's in the HIFA system, get them set up in the Housing Connections database, terminate them in HIFIS, and we'll start flowing the funding. We're going to keep the same file number, program number that you have with BC Housing, and the same funding flow will continue. And then we'll have everyone converted, and all transfers will need to be converted by March 31st, 2023. So I'm going to hand it back to Admis now, and she's going to sort of walk through the final slide and, you know, type in some chat, and we'll have some more time for questions at the end. I do see that there's actually one person has their hand up. Roger?
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
I'm just wondering about the conversions. So is there going to be, like, is it all going to be manual, or is it going to be like, are we going to be able to merge stuff from HIFIS into Housing Connections?
Yeah, I wish we could say no, it is going to have to be a manual process. Those two systems don't currently speak. It will be a manual process. The
Oh,
good, yeah, I know. We'll certainly, I wish we could have done something different on that. The good part about it, you know, if you want to look at glass half empty, glass half full, is in the conversion, people will get, in particular, if you have a few units, some good solid training on how the Housing Connection system work and getting those conversions done.
okay. Because we've had some, or I've had some experience of being able to get some of my, I guess we still have a little bit of our surplus, so we still have clients that are on that, but it's going to fall off soon. So we've been able to transfer some of those people to the new CBCHB, and we're finding that some of them, their subsidies have gone up, and some of them they go down. So yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, in theory, if people, it will have to figure that out, and if there are some that'll have a decrease, we'll have to determine how are we going to deal with that. It shouldn't happen for anyone who was on pure income assistance. We'll have to talk about that, and that's the other reason where we will likely want to do the conversion manually, so that we can identify any of those abnormalities and decide how are we going to deal with those to minimize any negative impact on the client.
okay, well, I've already got one. Well, they were they weren't a legacy client, one of the surplus clients. So they were going from totally losing their subsidy to, you know, getting one that was less than what they were getting.
Yeah, and that might have to be one of the things, right? That they were on a program that doesn't exist anymore, but that this might be the alternative that we can offer them. And then the other question, yeah. You know, the other thing that we can do, particularly if you are an HPP provider and you have HPP rent supplements and you have Canada Housing Benefit rent supplements, your CHB-HPP Legacy is a set client list. You can help Bob, Mary, Susan, and Bill, right? It's that set client list. Once you convert them over to CHB, I'm not as concerned about it being Bob, Mary, Susan, and Bill. So if in the process you determine that Bill would be better off on your regular HPP and you want to allocate Bill CHB to somebody else on your HPP list, we can work that out too. That will give you that flexibility. So because we just know that we need to phase out this temporary CHB-HPP program, it was meant to be an interim COVID solution. It didn't meet a number of the CMHC requirements for the program, so we need to kind of transition them. But certainly if you have some regular HPP that weren't part of this, and in the converting an HPP client, they might be better off going into your regular HPP, and maybe there's somebody else in your regular HPP that could come over and in the CHB slot and maybe be better off. We can have those conversations because we're not as concerned about the set client list with the new regular Canada Housing Benefit.
Right. Yeah. And I'm already trying to juggle clients around the different programs.
Yeah.
Because we're full. Yeah, we're fully
Right.
subscribed. So
yeah, and that's another reason why hopefully we'll be able to have some information in the not too distant future about the RFP process if you wanted to then increase your number of rent supplements as well, to put in an RFP for that. Anyhow, I'll hand it back over to Agnes.
Thanks for the question, Roger, and also bringing up the surplus piece. So definitely we'll be touching on that. So yeah, just a few things to consider, and thank you, Aaron, for rolling out and sharing information on the new program. So as mentioned, as part of the conversion, we will be terminating the CHB-HPP agreement, and you will need to sign a new operating agreement for the Canada BC Housing Benefit Program. Training will be made available for transferring clients and using BC Housing's Housing Connection system. For the CHB-HPP program, just also wanted to highlight there will be an annual reconciliation for that program. So just as an example, if as of October 1, you have all your legacy clients moved over to the Canada BC Housing Benefit Program, there will still be that annual reconciliation just to finalize that HIFIS matches your general ledger, right, as always. So there is that piece. And again, and thank you, Roger, for bringing it up. There may be some providers that still have CHB-HPP surplus funding. So funding that was unspent from those initial years. That is still required to be recorded in HIFIS. So if you do have, let's say, $10,000 left of CHB-HPP surplus, you would still be recording that in HIFIS, even if all your legacy clients have transitioned to the permanent program and you're recording their information in Housing Connections. So again, surplus still needs to be recorded until that is down to zero. All providers issuing the scattered rent supplements are required to issue the T5007 tax slips to comply with CRA requirements. And I believe Dexter has already done that, so please sign up for our webinar for more information. And a reminder that more information are on the CBCHB RFP, so request for proposal will be coming soon. And again, we will be reaching out to our CHB-HPP providers to inform them of that. Great, and
thank you, Agnes. Really appreciate.
No thanks, Tyler.
Yeah, no problem at all. So just a couple of questions have come in on the chat here, and I'll just throw them out to either you yourself or Aaron. And again, please feel free to either raise your hand or drop your questions in the chat. Question here: with providers involved in phase 1, do we retain those individuals, or do we also need to do the RFP to keep those clients we transitioned?
Yeah, I can take that on. So yeah, so with providers, again, so phase 1 is for all existing legacy clients. So if to transition, that will be phase 1. Phase 2, so the RFP is just if you wish to add additional rent subs. So if you have 5 existing legacy clients, those 5 will move over to the new program, so the Canada BC Housing Benefit Program. If as a provider, you're saying we can support the 5 plus 10 more, then the RFP will be for those 10 additional rent supplements.
Great. And another question for the HPP, we followed a budget. Will there be a budget for the CBCHB program?
So I'll take that one. No, it's not budget in the same way. It's paid based on subsidies administered. So if we allocate you, to use the example that Admis just gave, if you have 5 legacy that you convert over, we will fund you for those 5 legacy clients based on the actual amount that you give. So we might actually send you over 600 times 5 per month plus your $55 admin fee. If at the end of the and if we see through the year that you, for some clients are getting less than 600, but maybe some clients are getting more, maybe you house a few large families, then we'll actually make sure that we pay to the actual amount. So you won't be operating to a budget, you will be operating to a number of subsidies allocated. So if you have those 5 and then you put in an RFP and say we could take on a number 10, an additional 5, we'll fund you for those 15 and we'll fund you to the actual amount that is flowed to them plus your admin fee.
Great, thanks. And I see that Danielle has her hand up. Go ahead, Danielle.
Hi, this is a question just related. I know this isn't about HPP, but if this housing system is what we're going to be moving to for these clients, is there expectation that HPP will move away from HIFAS and into this housing system as well?
So our homeless outreach program rents up. So if you administer HOP, HPP, ICM, or any of the other kind of existing homeless outreach program rent supplements, those will stay within HIFAS. So our outreach and shelter programs will continue to use HIFAS 4.0. It is just the Canada BC Housing Benefit. There are other rent supplements, but it's this funding program that will be moving over. And it was kind of the system it was intended to be in from the beginning. Again, it was just because of that interim process, we set it up in HIFAS because we were mirroring it to HPP. But this program will be in Housing Connections, and HOP HPP will continue to be in HIFAS 4.0.
And I'll jump in here, and this is just a bit tying on to the question that Roger asked earlier around could we interface, could we transfer? The Housing Connection system is a system that has been around for a number of years at BC Housing, about 15, 16 years. It is on the long-term IT plan to be replaced. So as we look at replacing and upgrading this, the system, we'll also look at opportunities in the future to either integrate with other systems like HIFAS or to merge them into one. But I know it's unfortunate that there might be 2 databases, but it's just our unfortunate reality at this point in time. And as we move forward and look at replacing and upgrading our systems and looking for, we will be looking for more opportunities for integration for either it to be in one system or systems to at least talk to each other and share information better than they do today.
Thanks, Aaron. Another question has come in, and it relates to what's the earliest that folks can transition to the CBCHB program?
So we're still working that out. It depends on how quickly everyone replies to the survey. We're going to have to work with our agreements people to get the agreements out and to get some training done. So it'll probably be my best guess is probably November at the earliest, if we can really get some responses in and get some training delivered in October.
Great. Another question, how would the subsidy funds get sent to landlords? Is it through BC Housing or the nonprofit housing provider?
Oh, it's the nonprofit, so it's no different than your existing ones. The BC Housing does one bulk check to you as the housing provider, the administrator, every month, and it is your responsibility to continue to cut the individual payments for the clients that you allocated a benefit, whether you're sending those benefits directly to the individual themselves to pay their rent or to their landlord on their behalf. So that part does not change.
Great. And another question for phase one, if you no longer have legacy clients, do you put in an RFP for phase two for new clients that are eligible for CBCHB?
Exactly. Right? Is that if through the passage of time, all your CHB-HPP legacy clients have left the program and you are now no longer administering that, administering this, so there's no need for you to transition. So you don't need to, if all your legacy are gone, there's no need for you to transition or to sign up for a transition, but we will continue to keep you in the loop when we inform people when the RFP's up, because then you can say, we'd like to be able to administer some more and respond to the RFP.
Okay, another question has come in. Can you transition clients from another BC housing subsidy to this program?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the things we talked about, that if you have regular CHP, homeless outreach prevention rent supplements, and you have clients over there and you think that they'd be better off on the CHB and you could free up that homeless outreach rent supplement for someone else, you can do that as long as they meet the eligibility for the CHB.
Just want to clarify, though, that this initial kind of phase one transition is just for existing CHB-HPP legacy clients. So if you currently don't have CHB-HPP legacy clients, then yeah, it would be just going straight to phase two and requesting new rent supplements through this program. So transition is specific from this, the legacy client, the CHB-HPP, which was a short-term COVID response program. It was temporary, and that's kind of winding down. So that transition, just to be clear, is directly from CHB-HPP to the Canada BC Housing Benefit. And then phase two, so if you don't have existing legacy clients, phase two will be the requesting new rent supplements under that program.
And on that point about the phase two, there's a question that's come in. Will there be any staffing dollars available in the RFP process?
So there's the $55, and I see that I'm going to answer two questions at once, and then I'm going to defer to Admis to finish the question, because I'm looking at it. Are there any staffing dollars available in the RFP? I recall there being staffing assistance with CHB-HPP, and then someone below said, Nancy said below, is the admin fee per each new client or monthly? So it's $55 per unit per month. So if you have 5 remaining CHB-HPP legacy that we convert to CHB proper, you will get $55 times those 5 clients. You'll get $275 per month for each month that you're administering those rent supplements. So it is per month. Admis, I'll defer the part of the question to you around staffing assistance with the CHB-HPP.
Yeah, so for the when it initially rolled out, there was kind of some support that the provincial government, so through BC Housing, added on to the CHB-HPP, because there isn't staffing dollars with this program. So that was kind of that staffing assistance that we were able to help with, again, during those initial 9 months. However, as of April 1, 2021, it was that monthly 10%, which was the $45 per month. And so that is the only admin fee that is available. And also, so with the Canada BC Housing Benefit, it's now going to be the $55 and no longer a percentage. It's just a flat fee of $55 per unit per month.
Great, thank you, Admis. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any further questions, so I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us this morning. Really appreciate your flexibility. Oh, I'm sorry, one more question has just come in here from Carly. Confirming the new CHB funding is just for rent and not for other housing related costs. Is that correct?
That's correct. It is just to offset a portion of the rent that's above 30% of their income up to the rent ceiling.
Great. So again, thank you all for your flexibility. We do have one other training session coming up tomorrow. I'm sorry, on Thursday. And I really appreciate you all taking the time to join us this morning. As Dexter mentioned in the chat, there will be a recording of this session sent out to you, as well as the slides and information about how to sign up for more information about the Housing Connections training. So thank you all again, really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.